The Sith's allure does not exist in a vacuum. It thrives in the cracks of the Jedi Order's failures. To understand why so many beings turn to the dark side, we must confront an uncomfortable reality. The Jedi's own rigidity, detachment, and blind adherence to dogma often push them there. The Order frames itself as the galaxy's moral compass, but its refusal to adapt to emotion, its dismissal of individual suffering, and its obsession with tradition create a fertile ground for disillusionment. For those who feel unseen or betrayed by the Jedi, the Sith do not just offer power, they offer recognition of the pain the Jedi ignore. The dark side is not just a choice. It is often a reaction to a Jedi Order that fails to live up to its own ideals. The Jedi's rigid adherence to dogma is perhaps their greatest flaw. A refusal to bend even when the rules themselves become tools of injustice. No example is more stark than Ahsoka Tano's trial in the Clone Wars Season 5. When the Jedi Temple's hangar is bombed and several Jedi are killed, evidence points to Ahsoka, Anakin's Padawan, a loyal member of the Order. Instead of investigating thoroughly, the Jedi Council acts on panic and political pressure. They expel Ahsoka from the Order, strip her of her lightsaber, and turn her over to the Republic for a public trial. Even when Anakin uncovers proof that Barriss Offee, another Padawan, is the real bomber, the Council's first move is not to apologize. It is to offer Ahsoka reinstatement as if nothing happened. Ahsoka's response, refusing to return, telling Anakin the Order is not what I thought it was, is a rejection of a system that values rules over trust. The Jedi's dogma told them to prioritize the Order's reputation over an innocent Padawan's integrity. It told them to dismiss Ahsoka's pain as a test of faith. For Ahsoka, the Sith's promise of freedom, from rules, from judgment, from a community that betrayed her, must have felt like a lifeline. She did not turn to the dark side, but countless others in her position do. When the good guys treat you as guilty until proven innocent, the bad guys who say, "We see you," become impossible to ignore. The Jedi's detachment, their demand that emotions be suppressed, that love and grief be let go, is another catalyst for the dark side. Anakin Skywalker's entire journey is a study in how this detachment breaks people. Anakin is a being defined by love. His love for his mother Shmi, his love for Padme, his love for Ahsoka. But the Jedi tell him this love is dangerous. Master Yoda warns him, fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, hate leads to suffering. But he never acknowledges that love is the source of Anakin's fear. When Anakin has nightmares of Shmi's death, the Jedi tell him to accept loss as part of life. When he marries Padme in secret, they tell him he is breaking the code. When he fears Padme will die in childbirth, they tell him to trust in the Force. The Jedi do not just ask Anakin to suppress his emotions. They ask him to suppress himself. The Sith, by contrast, tell him his love is a strength. Palpatine whispers that the dark side can give him the power to save Padme, that his fear is not a weakness, but a motivation. For Anakin, this is not just a temptation, it is a reprieve. The Jedi make him feel like a monster for loving too deeply. The Sith make him feel like a hero for wanting to protect what he loves. This is the tragedy of the Jedi's detachment. It turns love into a sin, and in doing so, pushes people toward the very darkness they claim to fight. The Sith's focus on individual freedom and emotion is not just a random ideology. It is a direct counterpoint to the Jedi's suppression of these values. Where the Jedi demand obedience to the Council, the Sith demand obedience only to oneself. Where the Jedi see emotion as a threat, the Sith see it as fuel. Where the Jedi frame freedom as service to the galaxy, the Sith frame it as mastery of one's own destiny. Count Dooku, once a Jedi master who fought for justice, left the Order because he saw this counterpoint as a better path. The Jedi ignored his warnings about Republic corruption. They dismissed his calls to end slavery on Outer Rim worlds. They told him to be patient while innocent beings suffered. The Sith offered him a way to act without patience, to fight without permission, to change the galaxy without waiting for the Council's approval. The Jedi are prisoners of their own code. Dooku tells Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones, "I have freed myself." This freedom is what draws so many to the dark side. It is the freedom to feel, to fight, to be human, something the Jedi's detachment often denies. None of this excuses the Sith's crimes. The dark side is still a path of destruction, and the Jedi's flaws do not justify the suffering the Sith inflict. But to ignore the Jedi's role in creating their own enemies is to miss the point of Star Wars' moral complexity. The galaxy is not a battle between perfect good and perfect evil. It is a battle between two flawed ideologies, each with its own vision of how to save the galaxy. The Jedi want to save it through order and detachment. The Sith want to save it through passion and power. Both fail, but the Jedi's failure is more insidious. They claim to be the light, but their rigidity and detachment push people into darkness. The Jedi's flaws are not just mistakes. They are catalysts. They turn loyal Padawans into disillusioned outcasts. They turn idealistic masters into Sith lords. They turn people who once believed in the light into people who see no choice but the dark. The Sith do not win because they are stronger. They win because the Jedi give so many people reason to join them. To defeat the dark side, the Jedi must first confront the darkness within their own order. And that, as Anakin Skywalker's fall proves, is a lesson they learned too late. The Jedi's flaws may open the door to the dark side, but the Sith's own moral framework contains a fatal crack, one that ensures their ideology will always collapse under its own weight. For all their talk of strength and freedom, the Sith's philosophy is built on a contradiction. They chase power to break chains, yet their obsession with controlling that power turns them into prisoners of their own greed. What begins as a rejection of Jedi detachment ends as a spiral of betrayal, paranoia, and self-destruction. The Sith claim to offer liberation, but they deliver only a cycle of suffering, one that consumes not just their enemies, but themselves. The first crack in Sith morality is the self-destructive nature of unchecked power. The Sith code teaches that through power, I gain victory, but it never defines limits to that power. And without limits, power becomes a hunger that can never be satisfied. Darth Bane, the Sith Lord who created the rule of two, one master, one apprentice, to end the infighting that had crippled the Sith for centuries, thought he had solved this problem. But the rule of two did not eliminate greed. It institutionalized it. By design, it forced every apprentice to kill their master to ascend, and every master to fear their apprentice's ambition. Bane himself was nearly killed by his first apprentice, Darth Xana, who saw his age as a weakness to exploit. This pattern repeats through Sith history. Darth Sidious, Palpatine, killed his master, Darth Plagueis, in his sleep. He then manipulated Darth Vader into killing Count Dooku, a potential rival, and kept Vader weak, limiting his cybernetic upgrades, hiding secrets of the dark side, to ensure he could never rebel. Even Vader, the galaxy's most feared enforcer, was a prisoner of this cycle. He dreamed of overthrowing Palpatine, yet he was too dependent on his master's knowledge to act. Unchecked power does not set the Sith free. It turns them against each other, turning their strength into a weapon they wield as much against themselves as their enemies. This obsession with personal gain also erodes any hope of true unity, replacing trust with betrayal and loyalty with paranoia. The Sith do not form alliances. They form alliances of convenience, and every ally is a potential threat. Consider Darth Maul, Palpatine's first apprentice. Maul believed he was Palpatine's equal, a partner in building a Sith empire. But when Maul was defeated by Obi-Wan on Naboo, Palpatine abandoned him, leaving him for dead on Lothal Minor, never attempting to rescue him. Maul's subsequent descent into madness, seen in the Clone Wars, is a product of this betrayal. He spends years plotting revenge against both Palpatine and Obi-Wan, his once clear ambition twisted into a blind rage. Count Dooku makes the same mistake. He joins Palpatine believing they will rule the galaxy together, ending Republic corruption and Jedi hypocrisy. But Palpatine never sees Dooku as an equal. He sees him as a pawn. In Revenge of the Sith, when Anakin defeats Dooku, Palpatine urges Anakin to kill him. Do it. He is too dangerous to be left alive. Dooku dies realizing he was never more than a tool, his idealism crushed by the very Sith philosophy he embraced. The Sith's focus on personal gain means no one is ever safe. Friends become foes, masters become targets, and even victory feels like a betrayal. Paranoia is not a side effect of the dark side. It is its core. The long-term consequences of this fear-fueled philosophy are even more devastating. The Sith's goal of freedom through power ultimately undermines itself, as control through fear breeds only rebellion. Palpatine's empire is the perfect example. He uses the Clone Wars to seize power, framing himself as the galaxy's savior from separatist chaos. But once in control, he rules through terror. Dissidents are executed, planets are destroyed, Aldarian, anyone. And even loyal officers are choked to death for minor failures, as Vader does to Admiral Ozzel in The Empire Strikes Back. Palpatine believes fear will keep the galaxy compliant, but it does the opposite. It unites the galaxy against him. The Rebel Alliance, born from the ashes of the Clone Wars, is not just a group of soldiers. It is a reaction to the Sith's cruelty. Farmers from Tatooine, senators from Alderaan, even former clones, like Rex, join the rebellion because they have seen what the Sith's order looks like, a galaxy where freedom is a myth and fear is the only law. Even Vader, Palpatine's greatest weapon, is undone by this cycle. He spends decades enforcing the Empire's rule, but his own fear of loss, of Padme, of Luke, makes him vulnerable. In Return of the Jedi, it is not the rebels who defeat Vader. It is his love for Luke, an emotion the Sith told him to suppress. The Sith's philosophy of fear and control cannot sustain itself, because fear always finds a way to fight back. The Sith's moral vacuum is not a flaw in execution, it is a flaw in design. Their ideology promises strength and freedom, but it delivers only greed and isolation. They chase power to break chains, yet they forge new chains for themselves and everyone around them. They claim to be liberators, but they are only tyrants. Tyrants who eventually turn on each other, because the same ambition that drives them to power also drives them to destroy. In the end, the Sith do not fail because the Jedi are stronger. They fail because their own morality is a contradiction. You cannot build a galaxy on fear and call it freedom. You cannot claim to fight for strength while betraying everyone who trusts you. You cannot chase power endlessly without eventually being consumed by it. The Sith's dark side is not just a path to evil, it is a path to self-destruction. And that, more than any Jedi lightsaber, is their ultimate downfall. To reduce the Sith to a simple evil label is to miss the moral complexity that makes their story so haunting and so human. Throughout our exploration, we've seen that the Sith are not monsters born of darkness, but beings shaped by a galaxy that failed them, by a Jedi Order that suppressed emotion, by a republic that ignored injustice, by a world that left them feeling powerless. Their philosophy, rooted in passion, strength, and freedom, speaks to desires we all share. The urge to protect what we love, the hunger to break free from constraint, the drive to matter in a vast universe. But this is where the nuance lies. The Sith's ideology is not inherently evil, but it is fatally flawed, a house built on sand that collapses under the weight of its own contradictions. To understand the Sith is to confront not just a galaxy far, far away, but the quiet tensions in our own lives, between ambition and empathy, control and freedom, passion and rage. We've seen how the Sith's seduction works. They validate the pain no one else acknowledges. For Anakin Skywalker, a slave-turned-Jedi who feared loss more than anything, the Sith did not ask him to abandon his love for Padme. They asked him to use it, promising the power to keep her safe. For Count Dooku, an idealist who watched the Jedi ignore corruption, the Sith did not ask him to give up his quest for justice. They asked him to fight for it, no matter the cost. For Ahsoka Tano, though she never turned, the Sith would have offered what the Jedi took away: trust, agency, the right to feel without shame. These are not evil promises. They are human ones. The danger is not in the desire itself, but in the Sith's refusal to set limits. They tell you that passion can become anger, and anger can become power, and that power justifies any means. Anakin did not wake up wanting to choke Padme. He woke up wanting to save her. But the Sith logic, power at any cost, turned his love into rage, his fear into cruelty, his desire to protect into a willingness to destroy. This is the Sith's great lie. They promise freedom, but deliver only a cycle of destruction. Their philosophy is a shortcut to power, and shortcuts always exact a price. That price is the Sith's inevitable collapse. We've seen how their obsession with control breeds paranoia. Darth Sidious fears his apprentices. Darth Vader fears his own weakness. Darth Maul fears being forgotten. Their focus on personal gain turns every ally into a threat, every victory into a new enemy. The rule of two meant to end Sith infighting only institutionalized betrayal. An apprentice must kill their master to ascend. A master must fear their apprentice's ambition. Palpatine kills Plagueis. Anakin kills Dooku. Maul plots against Sidious. None of them trust. None of them rest. None of them ever find the freedom they chase. Even the Empire, Palpatine's greatest victory, is a testament to this failure. He rules through fear, believing it will keep the galaxy compliant, but fear only unites the oppressed. The Rebel Alliance, born from the ashes of the Clone Wars, is not just a fight against the Empire. It is a fight against the Sith's philosophy that power justifies cruelty, that control equals order, that emotion is a weakness. When Luke Skywalker refuses to kill Vader in Return of the Jedi, he rejects the Sith cycle, not by embracing the Jedi's detachment, but by finding a middle ground. He feels his anger, but does not let it consume him. He loves his father, but does not let that love blind him. This is the lesson the Sith never learn. Strength is not in dominating others, but in mastering oneself without losing one's humanity. For us, the Sith's story is not just a Star Wars tale. It is a mirror. We all feel the pull of unbridled ambition, the urge to cut corners to get ahead, to prioritize our own needs over others, to let fear drive our choices. We all know what it's like to feel powerless, to want to seize control, to wish for a shortcut to the life we want. The Sith remind us that these desires are not inherently wrong, but they require balance. Passion without empathy becomes cruelty. Ambition without integrity becomes greed. Freedom without responsibility becomes chaos. The Jedi's flaw was in suppressing emotion. The Sith's flaw is in weaponizing it. The true path for Luke, for us, is not in choosing between light and dark, but in choosing how to wield the light we have. In the end, the Sith are not a force of evil. They are a force of chaos, a warning of what happens when we let our pain turn to rage, our ambition turn to greed, our desire for control turn to fear. They are a reminder that the line between hero and villain is thin, and that the choices we make, small, daily, human choices, shape not just our own lives, but the world around us. The galaxy far, far away does not need more Jedi or more Sith. It needs more beings who are willing to feel deeply, fight fairly, and remember that power without compassion is not strength. It is a prison. So the next time you feel the pull of the dark side, the urge to cut a corner, to hold a grudge, to prioritize your own gain, remember the Sith. Remember Anakin, who lost everything he loved because he thought power could save him. Remember Dooku, who fought for justice but became the tyrant he hated. Remember that the shortcut is never worth it. The true strength is not in controlling the world around you, but in controlling yourself, in feeling deeply, loving fiercely, and choosing kindness even when it's hard. That is the light the Sith could never understand. And that is the light that will always outlast the dark.